When Keanu Reeves walked onto the View set that morning, he expected a simple interview. Instead, he faced a calculated attack, weaponizing his deepest pain on live TV. What happens when Hollywood's kindest man finally reaches his breaking point? Watch as everything changes in a moment no one saw coming. Before we continue this incredible story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow we have another inspiring story you won't want to miss. On a crisp October Monday morning, the streets of New York hummed with the usual early bustle. The air was cool but carried a hint of approaching winter, wrapping the city in a quiet urgency. Keanu Reeves arrived at the ABC studio early, well ahead of his scheduled interview on The View. The morning sun cast long shadows across the pavement as he stepped inside, his expression calm but thoughtful. This was meant to be a straightforward day, a simple interview to promote his latest film, John Wick 4. Accompanying him was his trusted agent Marcus, a man noticeably more tense than Keanu. Marcus clutched his phone tightly, checking messages and emails as they made their way through the maze of corridors backstage. "Remember," Marcus whispered, eyes flickering nervously. "Keep it light. Focus on the film. Avoid politics or anything controversial." Keanu nodded absent-mindedly, the words familiar, yet oddly unsettling today. There was something in the atmosphere he couldn't quite place. Backstage, the usual flurry of activity was happening, assistants rushing back and forth, adjusting lights, and finalizing the set. But beneath the surface, Keanu sensed an unusual tension. Staff and producers exchanged wary glances, their hushed conversations quickly ending when he approached. This was not the warm, welcoming environment he was used to from past talk show appearances. It felt different, more calculated, less spontaneous. Keanu's mind briefly wandered to the countless interviews he'd done over the years. Each had its quirks, its challenges, but nothing quite like this. He had come prepared to talk about his work, his passion for the craft, and the dedication behind John Wick 4. Yet something told him today's conversation might veer far from the expected script. As he reached the makeup room, a young woman named Sarah was waiting with her kit. She smiled warmly but lowered her voice as she began prepping his face. "Mr. Reeves," she said quietly, "I don't want to alarm you, but Joy Behar has been intense today. The producers mentioned she's got some very direct questions planned." Keanu offered a gentle smile, appreciation mixing with concern. "Thanks for the heads up, Sarah. I'm sure it'll be a civilized conversation." He hoped she was right. The makeup application went on smoothly, but Keanu's gaze was distant. He could feel the weight of the day pressing in on him, a strange mix of anticipation and unease. He glanced at the clock. Soon, it would be time to face the cameras, to step into the spotlight once again. But this time the light felt colder, the shadows deeper. As Sarah finished, a production assistant entered briskly. "Mr. Reeves, they're ready for the entrance rehearsal." Keanu took a deep breath, squared his shoulders, and prepared himself. Whatever was coming, he would meet it with the same quiet strength he'd carried through every challenge in his life. The rehearsal was swift, almost mechanical. Keanu practiced his entrance, walking to the host's table, greeting each co-host with his trademarked grace and humility. The movements felt familiar, rehearsed countless times before, but the atmosphere was charged with an invisible tension. The set gleamed under bright studio lights, yet Keanu could sense something darker lurking beneath the polished surface. Joy Behar sat at her usual spot, flipping through her notes with an intensity that bordered on manic. Her eyes were sharp, her smile tight and calculated. Nearby, Whoopi Goldberg exchanged worried looks with producers, her usual composure strained by the palpable unease. Sunny Hostin and Sarah Haynes appeared more relaxed, but even their smiles were edged with nervousness. Keanu's agent, Marcus, hovered just off stage, his face pale as he kept checking his phone. The scheduled interview was supposed to be a promotional highlight for the film, but no one seemed at ease. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. and Keanu's instincts told him this would not be a simple conversation. Minutes before the taping, Keanu was led backstage to wait for his cue. Alone in the dimly lit corridor, he noticed something unusual. Unlike other shows, where he'd always been given a list of questions or at least general topics beforehand, here he had received nothing. When he inquired, a producer shrugged and said, "The View likes to keep things spontaneous, no scripts, no previews. It's all about natural conversations." Keanu frowned slightly. In his 25 years as an actor, he had never done a show without some preparation or idea of the direction. The spontaneous format made sense for casual banter, but with the energy in the room, it felt like a setup. His agent murmured reassurance, reminding him the appearance was important for the film's promotion, especially given the show's wide female audience. But the sense of unease lingered, a quiet storm brewing beneath the surface. Keanu took a slow breath, centering himself. He reminded himself of the values that had always guided him: kindness, humility, respect. Whatever was coming, he would face it with grace. As the studio lights dimmed and the cameras began rolling, Keanu Reeves watched the hosts from the backstage monitor. The early segments passed by in a blur: lively chatter about current events, light jokes, and discussions on trending topics. The audience was engaged, laughter punctuated the conversation, and everything appeared routine. Yet beneath this polished surface, Keanu felt the atmosphere shift, as if the calm before a storm had settled over the set. Joy Behar's tone became noticeably sharper. Her voice, usually warm and playful, now carried a subtle edge, a hint of something more calculated and cold. When she introduced Keanu, her words seemed carefully measured but tinged with a quiet menace. "Our next guest is known for his roles in The Matrix, John Wick, and for being one of the kindest people in Hollywood," she announced. The audience applauded warmly as Keanu stepped onto the stage, his familiar, humble smile in place. Keanu greeted the hosts one by one. He gave a soft kiss on Whoopi Goldberg's cheek and nodded politely to Sarah Haynes and Sunny Hostin. But when he reached Joy, the air between them shifted. She offered only a cold, formal handshake. Her smile was tight, the warmth missing entirely. "Keanu," she said with a clipped tone that barely masked her underlying hostility. "Joy, pleasure to meet you," Keanu replied, his voice steady but his mind noting the chill in her greeting. As he settled into the guest chair and adjusted his microphone, Keanu smiled at the audience, attempting to maintain the lighthearted spirit he had come prepared for. The first questions, posed by Whoopi, focused on the film, the intense action scenes, his preparation, and his experience working with the director. Keanu answered with his trademark humility and self-deprecating humor, drawing the audience into a seemingly friendly conversation. But beneath the surface, the tension thickened. Keanu could sense the undercurrent of something darker. Joy was watching him intently, her eyes gleaming with a predatory intensity that set him on edge. The friendly banter was a fragile veil over what was to come. He had no idea that this interview would soon become one of the most brutal character assassinations ever aired on live television. Keanu's years of experience taught him to remain calm, to listen, and to respond with grace. Yet a growing unease settled deep within him, a warning that today's conversation would not be what he had expected. He was walking into a carefully laid trap, a psychological assault designed not just to challenge him, but to break him. As the cameras rolled and the lights shone brightly, Keanu prepared himself to face whatever was coming. The man known for kindness and patience was about to confront something far more sinister, a calculated attempt to weaponize his deepest personal tragedies for public entertainment. What happened next would shock millions and forever change how viewers saw the quiet strength behind his gentle demeanor. Backstage at the View studio, the air was thick with anticipation, but it wasn't the usual kind of excitement. Keanu Reeves stood near the entrance, silently watching the preparations unfold. He followed the stage manager's instructions, rehearsing his entrance, walking to the host's table, greeting each woman with his signature warmth, and settling into the guest chair. Every step was familiar from years of experience, yet today it all felt unsettlingly off. The smiles felt forced, the casual nods hollow. Joy Behar sat nearby, hunched over a stack of notes. Her eyes darted rapidly as she reviewed her questions, her jaw tight, lips pressed in a thin line. This wasn't the playful banter Keanu had anticipated. Her energy was sharp, almost aggressive, a stark contrast to the jovial personality he remembered from other appearances. She tapped a pen rhythmically against the paper, eyes flashing with what seemed like an unspoken agenda. Whoopi Goldberg and the other hosts exchanged brief glances, their expressions subtle but telling. A flicker of concern crossed Whoopi's face as she caught sight of Keanu observing Joy. Sunny Hostin and Sarah Haynes whispered quietly among themselves, their smiles wavering. The usual backstage camaraderie was replaced by a charged atmosphere, electric and tense. Everyone seemed to be bracing for something unexpected. Keanu's agent Marcus hovered nearby, phone in hand, running through last-minute details. Marcus noticed Keanu's subtle furrowing of the brow and approached with a reassuring smile. "Remember, just keep it light and focused on the movie," he whispered. "This appearance is important. It's a chance to reach a broad audience. Stick to the plan." Keanu nodded, but the nagging unease in his chest wouldn't dissipate. One of the most unsettling moments came when Keanu asked the producer for a preview of the questions. He had always been given at least a general idea of the topics before any talk show, a courtesy to prepare and avoid surprises. Today, however, the response was a curt shrug. "The View prefers to keep things spontaneous," the producer said casually. "No scripts, no lists, just natural conversation." Keanu blinked, surprised. It was a departure from standard protocol, and the excuse felt thin. He glanced toward Marcus, who simply nodded with a tight smile. "Spontaneous can be good," Marcus said, though his voice lacked conviction. "Just be ready for anything." As the crew hurried to finalize stage lighting, sound checks, and camera positions, the tension built steadily. Keanu's mind raced through the possibilities, the warnings from backstage makeup artist Sarah echoing in his memory. He wasn't sure what to expect, but one thing was clear. This wouldn't be a typical promotional interview. The studio floor buzzed with activity as the crew fine-tuned every detail before the live taping. Technicians adjusted microphones and cameras, and lighting operators tested the brightness and angles. The director paced behind the monitors, issuing rapid-fire instructions. Everyone was keyed up, but the mood was different from the usual upbeat energy that filled the space before a show. Keanu paced slowly near the makeup area, his hands tucked calmly into his pockets. His agent, Marcus, kept close, phone pressed to his ear, managing calls and last-minute scheduling details. Despite the outward calm, Marcus's anxious glances betrayed his worry about the strange undercurrents surrounding the interview. Nearby, Joy Behar continued to study her notes with an intensity that bordered on obsession. Her usually playful demeanor was replaced by something colder, more calculating. She flipped pages rapidly, underlining phrases and jotting down questions in a small, neat handwriting. Her eyes caught Keanu's briefly, and a small, knowing smile flickered. A silent challenge. Whoopi Goldberg stepped away from the main set to whisper a few words to the producers. Her face showed subtle concern, as if she sensed the interview might veer into dangerous territory. Sarah Haynes and Sunny Hostin exchanged glances, their usual enthusiasm dampened. Everyone seemed aware that something was amiss, yet no one openly addressed it. Keanu's uncertainty grew when he noticed that the usual briefings from producers about the interview flow were missing. No one came to reassure him or ease his worries. The sense of spontaneity felt more like a curtain, hiding something ominous behind it. Bick. Marcus tried to keep Keanu focused, reminding him of the importance of the film's promotion. "We've got a huge audience," Marcus said quietly. "This is your moment. Just stick to what you know. Talk about John Wick, your experiences, the action scenes. Keep it light. Avoid controversy. It's all about the movie." Keanu inhaled deeply, steadying himself. He had prepared for months for this interview, to connect with fans and share his passion for the project. But the growing tension backstage suggested that the challenge ahead might be far more personal than professional. As the final minutes before the live taping ticked away, the atmosphere backstage grew heavier, more charged, with a silent tension that few could ignore. Crew members exchanged uneasy glances, their usual pre-show excitement replaced by a palpable sense of apprehension. The director's sharp nods and clipped commands echoed urgency, heightening the pressure on everyone involved. Keanu adjusted his suit jacket for the last time, smoothing the fabric over his shoulders as he quietly prepared himself for the ordeal ahead. From across the studio floor, Keanu caught sight of Joy Behar. Her gaze was fixed, intense, and unlike the warm welcome he had come to expect, it carried a cold, calculating edge. There was no trace of the easy humor or lightheartedness that often characterized talk show interviews. Instead, he saw a focused determination that suggested this would be no ordinary conversation. Something deeper was at play, a carefully orchestrated challenge in which Keanu was to be the unwilling protagonist. Marcus, sensing the growing unease, leaned in close, his voice low but steady. "Keanu, whatever happens out there, remember who you are. Stay calm, stay yourself. We've prepared for this. You're stronger than anything they throw at you. Just keep your focus on the film and the fans." His reassurance was sincere, but even Marcus's usually confident demeanor held a flicker of concern. Keanu exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of the moment settle heavily on his shoulders. Years in the industry had taught him to handle interviews, fan questions, and media scrutiny with grace and composure, but the undercurrent of hostility he sensed today was something new. It felt like walking into a storm, uncertain of where the lightning might strike. The studio lights suddenly intensified, bathing the set in their harsh glow. Cameras turned their lenses toward the host's table as the producer called the final countdown. Keanu's heartbeat synchronized with the rising anticipation, each second drawing him closer to the moment when the facade would drop and the real test would begin. The rehearsal was done. Now, under the watchful eyes of millions, Keanu Reeves was about to face a confrontation that would challenge his kindness, patience, and resilience in ways he had never imagined. The studio lights brightened, and the show's opening music faded as the camera panned across the audience, capturing the excited faces waiting for the next guest. The atmosphere was upbeat and expectant, the hosts engaged in lighthearted banter about the day's headlines and pop culture news, their laughter blending into the hum of the studio. The mood was warm, inviting, as the show prepared to welcome one of Hollywood's most beloved actors. The announcer's voice cut through the chatter. "Please welcome the star of John Wick 4, the endlessly humble and talented Keanu Reeves." Applause erupted as Keanu entered the stage. His casual but confident stride, dressed in a simple black suit without a tie, exuded the unpretentious charm that fans adored. He smiled genuinely, waving to the audience before greeting each host warmly. He kissed Whoopi Goldberg on the cheek and exchanged a friendly nod with Sunny Hostin and Sarah Haynes. But when he reached Joy Behar, the greeting shifted. She offered a cold, formal handshake, a stiff smile masking an undercurrent of tension. Keanu noticed immediately but maintained his poise. "Joy, it's a pleasure," he said, voice calm and courteous, hoping to diffuse the chill with kindness. Her smile never softened. The interview began on familiar ground, with Whoopi asking Keanu about the grueling physical training he had undergone for the film. Keanu's answers were characteristically modest and self-deprecating. "I'm just lucky to have a good stunt team and a great director who pushes me," he replied with a gentle laugh. The conversation flowed easily, with light jokes about on-set mishaps and anecdotes from filming. For a moment, the show felt like any other. The audience relaxed, The tension backstage seemed to dissipate, but beneath the surface, a storm was gathering. Joy Behar's eyes narrowed slightly as she scanned her notes, preparing to steer the conversation onto unfamiliar and more volatile territory. The moment arrived when her tone changed. A subtle shift that sent a ripple through the studio. Without warning, Joy leaned forward, her voice sharp and cutting. "Keanu," she began, "do you consider yourself a politically conscious actor?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. The audience's applause faded into silence. Keanu blinked, surprised by the abruptness and unanticipated direction of the inquiry. "Well," he answered cautiously, "I try to stay informed like any citizen." His voice was steady, but careful. Joy's smile twisted, taking on a predatory edge. "Interesting, because many people say artists like you live in a bubble of privilege, completely disconnected from the struggles most Americans face." The studio fell into an uncomfortable hush. The warmth that had filled the room moments before evaporated, replaced by a thick tension. The other hosts exchanged glances, unsure how this shift would play out. Keanu kept his composure, though a subtle tightness crept into his expression. "I can't say for sure," he said evenly. "I try to treat all people with respect and kindness, regardless of their social position." The answer was diplomatic, designed to diffuse the tension, but it only seemed to sharpen Joy's edge. Joy's smile deepened, but there was no warmth in it, only a calculated sharpness, like a blade glinting in the light. "That's a politically correct answer," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "But the truth is, Hollywood celebrities profit billions while ordinary people struggle to pay their bills. And then you come here talking about kindness? How convenient." The room grew colder. The audience shifted uncomfortably, sensing the change in atmosphere. Whoopi Goldberg's face showed surprise and concern, as if this line of questioning had caught even her off guard. She glanced briefly at the producers, who nodded but remained silent, letting the interview unfold. The usual rehearsed flow was gone. This had become something raw and unpredictable. Keanu's eyes flickered with a hint of discomfort, but he remained silent, gathering his thoughts. After a moment, he spoke softly but firmly. "I don't think kindness is about wealth or status. It's about how you treat people every day, whether it's a crew member on set or a stranger on the street." His voice was calm, but there was a subtle steel beneath the gentleness. It was clear that he was measured, choosing his words carefully, unwilling to be baited. Joy leaned in, undeterred. "But don't you think your charitable donations are often publicity stunts? Didn't you recently donate part of your Matrix earnings to the special effects crew? Convenient timing, with plenty of media coverage." Her tone was accusatory, aimed to provoke. The audience's silence turned into a collective intake of breath, sensing the interview was becoming a public confrontation. Keanu blinked, genuinely confused. I don't understand the question," he said. "Yes, I shared some of the profits, because I believe success isn't just about the lead actors. It's about the whole team." He sounded sincere, almost hurt that his intentions were being questioned so harshly. Joy laughed, a harsh, almost mocking sound that echoed through the studio. "Of course, and that information, accidentally, leaked to the press, didn't it? Very convenient for your image." The accusation hit like a punch. Keanu's face tightened for a brief moment, but he kept his composure, his hands folded calmly on his lap. "Joy," Whoopi interjected gently, "maybe we should move on?" But Joy was relentless, cutting her off abruptly. "No, Whoopi. The public deserves the whole truth. How many celebrities do you know who make charitable donations and make sure everyone knows about it? It's all for show." Her eyes glinted with a fierce intensity, and the studio audience murmured uneasily. Keanu took a slow breath. "I never asked for any publicity about my donations," he replied quietly. "In fact, I prefer to keep such things private." There was a quiet dignity in his tone, a quiet strength beneath the surface. But Joy wasn't finished. Joy's gaze sharpened, her tone growing colder as she leaned closer, as if preparing to deliver a final blow. "Then explain this," she challenged, her voice slicing through the studio air. "You grew up in Toronto, in a middle-class family. You never experienced real hardship, yet you paint yourself as someone who understands the struggles of ordinary people. Isn't that a bit dishonest?" The question hung heavy, cutting deeper than any before. Keanu's hands trembled slightly, but his voice remained steady, controlled. "I never claimed to have lived through hardships others face," he said softly. "I never tried to portray myself as something I'm not." There was a quiet honesty in his words, but also an unyielding firmness. Joy smirked, pulling out another card from her notes. "What about those stories you've told about living in cheap hotels, working odd jobs when you were young? Didn't you romanticize those years, as if that somehow makes you more relatable?" Marcus, standing just off stage, turned pale. He knew this was a line no interview should cross, but there was no way to intervene now. Keanu closed his eyes briefly, recalling those lonely nights, the uncertainty, the pain of his father's absence. "Those were difficult times," he admitted quietly. "There's no romance in them, just survival. I have nothing to gain by glorifying that period." The studio fell into silence, the weight of his words settling over the audience. Joy laughed loudly, a harsh sound that echoed unnervingly. "Difficult times?" she scoffed. "You had a safety net. Millions of Americans face hardships every day that make your story seem like fairy tales." Whoopi finally spoke up, attempting to steer the conversation back to safer ground. "Joy, I think we're getting off track." But Joy's mask of civility was gone. "No, we're not," she snapped. "It's time to stop the Hollywood victim narrative. Enough with billionaires playing the martyr." The room grew tense. Keanu looked around at the other hosts, who seemed mortified. The audience shifted uncomfortably. Cameras captured every moment of this unexpected, brutal confrontation. For a brief moment, Keanu appeared vulnerable, like an animal cornered for public entertainment. Then his voice rose, low but clear. "I understand your anger at Hollywood, but why make it personal?" He locked eyes with Joy, his gaze steady and strong. "You can question my career, my money, my choices, but you will not speak of my daughter." The unspoken threat in his tone sent a chill through the studio. Joy hesitated, but only briefly. Then, with a nervous laugh, she retorted, "Now we're getting to the real Keanu." The battle had begun, and neither side would back down. Joy Behar's eyes narrowed as she shifted gears, launching into a relentless assault on Keanu's wealth and celebrity status. "Let's talk about your money," she began, her tone sharp and mocking. "You present yourself as humble, as a man who rides the subway and lives simply. But the truth is, you're part of an elite world most people can't even imagine." The studio grew quiet, the audience leaning forward in anticipation, sensing a shift in the atmosphere. Keanu's face remained calm, but there was a flicker of pain behind his eyes. Joy continued, "You parade your generosity like a badge of honor, but isn't it all just a calculated publicity stunt? Donating part of your earnings to the crew, sharing it with the press? It's all for the cameras, isn't it?" Keanu blinked, momentarily taken aback by the bluntness of the accusation. He responded carefully, "I don't believe in publicity stunts. In fact, my donations are usually private. The press finds out through leaks, not my doing." His voice was steady, but beneath the surface, the sting of misunderstanding was clear. Joy smirked, refusing to relent. "Sure, private leaks," she said sarcastically. "How convenient that these leaks always paint you as the generous hero." The audience shifted uneasily, sensing the confrontation was becoming personal. The other hosts exchanged glances. Some tried to intervene, but Joy was in full force. Keanu took a breath and defended himself further. "I don't seek attention for my giving. I give because I believe it's right. It's about making a difference, not headlines. His sincerity was unmistakable, but Joy's expression hardened. Then explain this, she challenged. If you're so humble, why the stories about riding the subway or eating simple meals? Isn't that just part of the performance to seem relatable? The question cut deep, striking at the heart of Keanu's public persona. Keanu's eyes narrowed slightly, his voice gaining quiet strength. I ride the subway because it's practical. I eat simple meals because I enjoy them. There's no performance. These are just parts of my life. The audience murmured in response, some nodding in agreement, others unsure how to react. Joy's relentless tone continued. But you grew up with a safety net. Middle-class family, comfortable upbringing. How can you claim to understand real hardship when your struggles were nothing like those millions of Americans face? The accusation echoed through the studio, heavy and pointed. Keanu's hands clenched lightly in his lap, but his voice remained composed. I never claimed to have experienced the same hardships others face. I've never tried to be something I'm not. The tension between them was palpable. The audience caught in the crossfire of this unexpected war of words. Joy laughed, a harsh, biting sound. So romanticizing your early years as an actor, living in cheap hotels and doing odd jobs is just storytelling? She taunted. Marcus, watching from the sidelines, grimaced. The interview was spiraling, far from the simple promotional appearance they had planned. Keanu closed his eyes briefly, recalling those difficult days, the loneliness, the uncertainty. Those were not romantic times. They were survival. I'm not trying to gain sympathy or fame from them. His voice was low, tinged with a quiet dignity that contrasted sharply with Joy's biting sarcasm. The studio was silent now, the atmosphere thick with discomfort. The hosts and audience could feel the moment stretching, an emotional battle playing out live before their eyes. The interview was no longer about a movie. It had become a personal and public reckoning. Joy's relentless barrage intensified as she pressed deeper into Keanu's past, her tone dripping with disdain. Come on, Keanu. Millions of people face real hardships every day, losing jobs, homes, struggling just to put food on the table. And here you are, painting your journey as some noble struggle, turning every hardship into a romantic tale to connect with fans. Her words were sharp, aimed to provoke doubt and unsettle. Keanu's jaw tightened, but he refused to back down. I never claimed my experiences are comparable to anyone else's. I only speak my truth. Life wasn't easy for me. There was no glamour, no romance. Only hardship and perseverance. His voice carried the weight of years lived in quiet resilience. The audience sat silently, many visibly moved by his words. Even the other hosts exchanged uncertain looks, sensing the interview had crossed from friendly promotion to a battlefield of personal wounds. Joy leaned forward, her eyes flashing. And what about your charity work? Isn't it just another way to polish your image? Let's be honest, how much of that money really reaches the people who need it? You know, a lot of foundations have huge overheads. She flicked through her notes, as if ready to unleash another damaging fact. Keanu took a deep breath, steadying himself. My foundation is independently audited. All records are public. Transparency is important to me. His calm defense contrasted sharply with Joy's aggressive tone, but the skepticism in the room was palpable. Joy scoffed. Public records don't always tell the full story. What about the stories of foundations that spend more on administration than actual aid? It's easy to claim generosity when it's just numbers on paper. Her voice was biting, sowing doubt. Marcus, standing quietly nearby, could sense the tension building beyond what was expected or comfortable. He shot a concerned glance toward Keanu, who remained composed but visibly burdened by the line of attack. Keanu's voice grew firmer, embodying a quiet dignity. I give because I believe in helping others, not for recognition. The people I help don't ask for publicity, and neither do I." His words resonated with genuine conviction, cutting through the cynical accusations. Joy's eyes narrowed, refusing to yield. "Then explain this whole everyman act. The subway rides, the casual meals, the humble persona. Isn't it just a well-crafted image designed to win public sympathy?" The question hung in the air, loaded and confrontational. Keanu met her gaze steadily. "Those are parts of my real life, not an act. I live simply because I value simplicity, not to win sympathy." The studio audience reacted with quiet murmurs, torn between disbelief and support. Joy smirked, but the host's discomfort grew. The conversation was spiraling, leaving behind any semblance of a typical celebrity interview. Whoopi glanced at the producers, her face marked by concern, as she prepared for what might come next. The tension was thick now. What began as lighthearted promotion had become a raw, emotional clash, one that revealed more about the man behind the fame than any scripted interview ever could. Joy's voice took on a sharper edge as she targeted Keanu's upbringing. "You grew up middle class in Toronto, never experiencing the real hardships many Americans face. Isn't it a bit dishonest to act like you do?" Keanu maintained his composure, replying evenly, "I never claimed to have faced those struggles. My hardships were real, but I don't romanticize them or pretend they're something they're not." Joy scoffed, dismissing his experiences as exaggerated attempts to connect with everyday people. "You've told stories about living in cheap hotels, doing odd jobs. Sounds like a performance designed to gain sympathy." Keanu's voice grew firmer. "Those years were about survival, not storytelling. I lived those moments alone, uncertain, and without any glamour." The audience fell into an uneasy silence, sensing the sincerity behind his words. Joy, however, waved away his honesty. "Compared to what millions endure, your struggles seem like a luxury." Whoopi tried to intervene gently. "Joy, maybe we're going off course here." But Joy cut her off with a cold stare. "No, the public deserves to see the truth behind the Hollywood image. We're tired of this narrative where celebrities play victims." Keanu looked around at the other hosts in the audience, then responded with quiet strength. "I understand anger at Hollywood, but this personal attack crosses a line." Joy's triumphant smile faltered for a moment, unaware she had awakened a deep, unshakable resolve. The humble man before them was no longer just a guest. He was ready to stand up for himself in a way no one expected. The atmosphere in the studio shifted dramatically as Joy Behar leaned forward, her voice dropping to a cold, cutting tone. "Keanu, you've faced tragedy in your life. The loss of your daughter, your failed relationships, your profound loneliness. Do you ever wonder if it's all some kind of pattern?" Her words struck like a weapon, the subtle accusation hanging in the air. The audience gasped, some visibly uncomfortable with the sudden, raw, personal nature of the questions. Whoopi Goldberg's expression tightened as she glanced toward Joy, silently pleading for restraint, but Joy was relentless. Keanu sat frozen for a moment, processing the sharpness of the attack. His usual calm and gentle demeanor began to waver. The pain of private grief, something he had protected fiercely, was being dragged into the harsh glare of public scrutiny. Joy's eyes glittered with a harsh satisfaction. "It's almost like your tragedies have become part of your public persona, fueling the sympathy you garner from fans and media alike. How do you respond to that?" Keanu's hands clenched slightly on his lap. "My losses are not a performance. They are real. They have shaped me, but I do not use them to gain sympathy or attention." The tension in the studio was palpable. Some viewers sat in stunned silence, others shifted nervously. The mood had shifted from admiration to something heavier, charged with unease. The hosts exchanged worried glances, sensing that the interview was spiraling dangerously out of control. Joy's voice remained steady but merciless. "Then why do you never shy away from sharing these stories? Why do you allow yourself to be seen as the tragic hero?" Keanu's jaw tightened. Because those stories are part of who I am, not a show. I share them to remind myself and others that pain is real and universal, not for applause or pity. The audience's discomfort grew. Some began to whisper, others looked down. It was clear this was no longer just an interview. It was a battle of wills, and Keanu Reeves was beginning to show a side no one had expected. Joy Behar didn't relent. Her gaze sharpened as she pressed deeper. But isn't it convenient that your tragic stories make for compelling headlines? That your persona as the kind, humble man who's endured so much keeps the public captivated? Some might say it's a well-crafted image. The words echoed sharply through the studio. Keanu's eyes flickered with restrained frustration. He had always been private about his pain, yet here it was being wielded as ammunition. "I don't control how others use my story," Keanu said steadily, his voice low but firm. "I've never sought the spotlight for my losses. My focus has always been on my work and helping others quietly." The audience remained silent, the tension thickening like a storm ready to break. Whoopi and the other hosts exchanged anxious glances. They could see the strain beginning to show on Keanu's usually composed face. Joy pressed on, relentless. "And what about your relationships? You've been open about heartbreak and loneliness. Do you ever wonder if your image as a Hollywood nice guy is just a mask to hide deeper struggles?" Keanu's fingers tightened into fists in his lap. His voice grew firmer. "I am who I am. There's no mask. The pain I've endured is real, not a performance for the public. I don't owe anyone an explanation beyond that." A murmur swept through the audience, part sympathy, part discomfort. The line between personal privacy and public exposure had been crossed, and the weight of it was undeniable. Joy leaned back slightly, a cold smile on her lips. "You maintain your innocence, but many wonder if your kindness is part of the act, a way to deflect criticism and maintain your status." Keanu's stare hardened. "Kindness is not an act. It's a choice I make every day, especially when faced with cruelty like this." The room fell into a heavy silence, broken only by the faint sound of cameras whirring. The stage was set for something far more profound than a simple interview. Joy's voice lowered, sharper than before, the edge unmistakable. "But you have to admit, Keanu, tragedy sells. It shapes your public image and creates this aura of empathy that few actors can claim. How much of it is genuine and how much is carefully managed for the cameras?" Keanu's jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. "My grief is private. It's not for sale. When I speak about my losses, it's because I believe in the power of shared humanity, not because I want to cultivate an image." He paused and scanned the room, eyes locking briefly with the audience, the hosts, and the cameras. "Losing my daughter Ava was the darkest moment of my life. It's not a story I tell lightly or for sympathy. It's a truth that shapes how I live every day, with compassion, humility, and a deep respect for others." Several people in the audience shifted uncomfortably, some wiping tears from their cheeks. The silence that followed was heavy with meaning, as if the weight of his words had settled on everyone present. Joy adjusted in her seat but pressed on, unwilling to back down. "So, all this kindness, humility, generosity you're known for, is it really authentic, or just a performance for public consumption?" "USHS." Keanu's gaze sharpened. "Yes, it is authentic, because kindness is not weakness, it is strength. The strength to face pain and still choose empathy over bitterness. The strength to keep moving forward when life tries to break you." His voice grew firmer, filled with a quiet power that captivated the studio. "I've been shaped by loss and hardship, but those experiences taught me that every person deserves dignity, that behind every face is a story you don't know." A ripple passed through the crowd, the emotional connection palpable. For the first time in the interview, the man known worldwide for his gentle demeanor revealed the unyielding spirit beneath. Joy's confident facade began to crack as she realized she had awakened something deeper in Keanu Reeves. This was no longer a promotional interview, it was a moment of raw human truth. The tension in the room was electric. Keanu was no longer just the kind actor promoting a movie. He was a man standing his ground, fiercely protecting his story, his family, and his integrity against a barrage of public attack. As the cameras rolled, capturing every expression, every breath, the interview crossed a line that would be remembered far beyond the broadcast. It became a testament to resilience, dignity, and the enduring power of kindness in a world too often driven by cruelty and spectacle. The atmosphere in the studio had shifted from tense to unbearable. Joy's words, once cutting, had now become a venomous blade slicing through the already fragile calm. She leaned forward, her eyes locked on Keanu with an intensity that was almost predatory. The room seemed to shrink, every eye fixed on the unfolding confrontation. Keanu's expression darkened. Something deep inside him stirred, a reservoir of strength built from years of pain and perseverance. He straightened in his chair, his calm demeanor giving way to a firmness that demanded attention. His voice, when he finally spoke, was steady but carried the weight of a man who had reached his limit. "Joy," he said, his tone measured but resolute, "I'm asking you to stop using my daughter's death as ammunition." The words echoed in the silence, a plea wrapped in an unyielding command. The audience held their breath. This was no longer just an interview. It was a battle for dignity. Joy blinked, momentarily stunned. Her usual sharp retorts faltered for a second, but then the defiant edge returned. "And what? You think you're the only one who suffered narcissistic much, Keanu? You manipulate your story to gain sympathy and protect your image." Her accusation hung in the air like a gauntlet thrown. Murmurs rippled through the studio. The hosts exchanged uneasy glances. Whoopi's lips pressed into a thin line, silently pleading for calm. But the moment had erupted beyond control. Keanu slowly rose from his chair, his movements deliberate, commanding the room's attention. The weight of years of silence and kindness now gave way to unshakable resolve. "I will not be anyone's entertainment today," he declared, his voice calm but filled with undeniable power. The studio fell into stunned silence. The camera zoomed in, capturing every flicker of emotion, every hardened line on Keanu's face. His eyes, usually so gentle, were now fierce, conveying a silent warning that this moment was pivotal. Without hesitation, Keanu reached up and removed his microphone, the soft click resonating like a final act of defiance. The gesture was loaded with meaning, a refusal to be used, a stand against cruelty disguised as conversation. All eyes watched as he gathered his composure, preparing to leave the stage, signaling to everyone present the intensity of what had just transpired. This was no ordinary exit. It was a declaration, a breaking point, where kindness met unbreakable strength. The room was thick with tension as Keanu stood silently, the microphone now lying on the table between him and Joy. Every heartbeat seemed amplified, the audience frozen in anticipation of what would come next. Joy's face shifted, the initial shock giving way to something more complex, a mix of anger, disbelief, and a hint of regret. Keanu's gaze did not waver. His voice, when he spoke again, was quieter but no less powerful, carrying the weight of his personal history and moral clarity. "You crossed a line today," he said slowly, each word deliberate. "My daughter's death is not a topic for entertainment. It's the most sacred pain I carry." The studio was completely silent. Even the rustle of papers or the hum of cameras faded into the background. The audience, once rapt by the drama, now felt a profound stillness, a shared recognition of the raw human pain laid bare. Joy's defiance flickered. Her mouth opened, perhaps to apologize, but no words came. Her composure cracked, her eyes filling with tears that spoke of a dawning understanding. It was a moment of vulnerability rarely seen on live television, a chasm between confrontation and conscience. Word. Keanu continued, voice steady and clear. I've faced loss that no one should endure, but I have never used that pain to gain sympathy or advantage. Instead, it's taught me empathy, the understanding that behind every face is a story, often hidden. He paused, scanning the faces of the hosts, the audience, the millions watching at home. Kindness is not weakness. Humility is not submission. Respect for others, even in the face of cruelty, is strength. Joy's expression softened, the harsh lines of her earlier aggression replaced by the weight of realization. The room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what would happen next. Would this be the moment of reconciliation, or had the damage gone too far? Keanu reached for his jacket, a signal that he was ready to leave, but before stepping away, he looked directly at Joy, his eyes unyielding. This ends now. I will not be your entertainment, nor your target. He turned, his movements graceful yet resolute. As he walked toward the exit, the studio held a fragile silence, a collective intake of breath marking the gravity of the moment. What had started as a promotional interview had become a defining moment of human dignity and courage. As Keanu reached the edge of the stage, the cameras remained fixed on him, capturing every step, every breath. The weight of the moment pressed heavily upon the studio and everyone watching from home. Joy Behar sat frozen, her face pale, tears now freely streaming down her cheeks. The harshness of her earlier words had been met with a strength and grace she had not anticipated. Keanu paused just before the exit, turning slightly to face the room one last time. His voice was calm, yet charged with a power that silenced every murmur. To those watching, understand this. Cruelty is a choice. So is kindness. His eyes scanned the audience, the hosts, the cameras, and the millions beyond the screen. Today, I chose kindness. The studio doors opened behind him, and with that final statement, Keanu Reeves stepped out, leaving behind a stunned room filled with raw emotion and unanswered questions. The silence that followed was thick, the kind that speaks louder than any applause. Backstage, Marcus approached quickly, placing a reassuring hand on Keanu's shoulder. The tension broke just slightly, but the gravity of what had unfolded was undeniable. Reporters and producers buzzed in shock and awe. The world outside was already abuzz, millions sharing and replaying the moment on social media. Inside the studio, Whoopi Goldberg and the remaining hosts gathered, visibly shaken but beginning to regain composure. The interview had transcended entertainment. It had become a profound statement on respect, pain, and the limits of public discourse. As the cameras faded to a commercial break, viewers everywhere were left grappling with what they had witnessed. A man pushed beyond patience, revealing a core of unbreakable dignity. The interview that was meant to promote a movie had unexpectedly exposed the raw truth of humanity and changed television forever. The studio remained silent as Keanu, standing tall, let the weight of the moment settle. Instead of reacting with anger or bitterness, he took a slow breath and began to speak. His voice calm, steady, yet filled with profound sincerity. "I want to talk about kindness," he said softly, his eyes sweeping across the audience and the hosts alike. "Kindness isn't weakness. Humility isn't submission. They are expressions of strength, born from understanding the fragility of life." He paused, gathering his thoughts carefully, as if choosing each word with the care of a sculptor shaping a masterpiece. "I come from a place of hardship. My father left when I was just a boy. That kind of absence creates a void, one that taught me early what it means to be alone, to feel invisible. It's a pain that doesn't disappear, but it does teach you compassion for others who suffer. Keanu's voice grew quieter, more reflective. I spent years struggling to find my way. There were nights sleeping in cars, eating what little I could afford, uncertain if I'd ever make it. Those times weren't romantic or glamorous, they were necessary. His gaze held a raw honesty that cut through the studio's charged atmosphere. But loss, he continued, that's something else entirely. Losing my daughter Ava? She never got the chance to know the world, to laugh, to grow, to love. That loss has shaped everything I am. It's not something I share to seek sympathy or admiration. It's a reminder that every person we meet is fighting their own battles. Every crew member on set, every stranger passing by, might be carrying unseen pain. The audience sat rapt, some wiping tears from their eyes, others nodding silently in understanding. Even the hosts appeared moved, their earlier tension giving way to a solemn respect. Keanu's words were a mirror held up to a culture too often obsessed with spectacle over substance. Pain, he said, voice firming, is not entertainment. It is real. It is human. And using it as a weapon to tear someone down only perpetuates a cycle of cruelty that leaves us all poorer. The air was thick with emotion as Keanu challenged not just the moment, but an entire culture that too often thrives on humiliation and division. His presence commanded the room, not through force, but through the undeniable truth of his message. Kindness, Keanu said, is a choice we make every day. To see others, to respect their dignity, to act with humility even when it's difficult. That's what I believe in. That's what I live by. The room held its breath, the energy shifting from confrontation to contemplation. This was no longer just an interview. It was a lesson, a call to humanity that transcended the cameras and scripts. Keanu Reeves, the man known for his gentle spirit, was showing the world the power of quiet strength in the face of cruelty. Keanu's voice deepened, steady and clear as he continued. Many people look at my life and see a story of success. But success never erased the pain. It never healed the wounds left by loss or loneliness. What it gave me was a platform, a chance to remind others that behind every smile, every public moment, there is a story no one sees. He looked directly at Joy Behar, the source of the harsh questions and accusations. You asked if I use my hardships to gain sympathy. No, I use them to understand people better, to treat every person with the kindness I wish I'd had when I was struggling, to be a light in the darkness for someone else. The studio audience was silent, hanging on his every word. Even those who had been skeptical before now seemed drawn in by the raw honesty. Keanu wasn't pleading or defending, he was sharing a lived truth, one that demanded respect. My bubble of privilege, he said, is not one of luxury or detachment. It includes visiting children's hospitals, not for cameras, not for praise, but because I know the weight of loss. It includes paying for medical bills for strangers, supporting families who have lost everything. It includes remembering the name of every crew member on set, because I know what it's like to feel invisible. He took a breath, letting the words sink in. I don't pretend to have all the answers, but I believe that kindness can change the world, that humility is a strength, not a weakness, and that dignity is something we owe to ourselves and to each other, especially in times of pain. Keanu's gaze softened for a moment. But what I saw today, he said quietly, was cruelty disguised as entertainment. A desire to tear someone down for ratings, for clicks. That isn't the world I want to live in. It isn't the world I want for my daughter. The studio remained still, the tension transforming into a powerful collective reflection. Keanu's words weren't just a rebuttal, they were a challenge to a society too often willing to sacrifice compassion for spectacle. "You can question my money, my choices, my image," he said, voice steady. "But you cannot use my daughter's memory as a weapon. That crosses a line no one should ever cross." The room was filled with an overwhelming sense of respect and empathy. The man who had been attacked with relentless cruelty now stood as a beacon of strength and grace. Keanu Reeves wasn't just defending himself. He was defending the very idea that kindness and humanity still matter in a world too quick to judge and tear down. As Keanu's speech reached its crescendo, his voice resonated with a calm but unyielding authority. "I've learned that life is fragile and unpredictable. The losses I've faced, the absence of my father, the death of my daughter Ava, have shaped me, not to seek pity, but to foster empathy. They remind me every day to see beyond the surface, to respect the battles others fight silently." He paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle over the studio. Faces in the audience reflected a mix of sorrow, understanding, and newfound admiration. The usual chatter and shifting in seats had ceased completely. Even Joy Behar sat motionless, the sharp edges of her earlier aggression softened into something almost unrecognizable. Keanu's eyes scanned the room, his gaze steady but warm. Kindness is not weakness, humility is not submission. These are choices, and they require courage. Courage to be vulnerable, to face criticism, to rise above cruelty. His tone grew firmer, yet never crossed into anger. This culture that profits from tearing people down, using pain as spectacle, must change. We must demand better, from ourselves and from each other. He straightened, his presence commanding yet grounded. "I'm not here to play the victim or to prove anyone wrong. I'm here to remind everyone watching that behind every public figure is a person with hopes, fears, and wounds, and that humanity is the bridge that connects us all." Turning slightly toward the camera, Keanu concluded, "So, I ask you, when faced with cruelty or judgment, will you choose kindness? Will you see the person behind the pain? Because that choice can change lives. It changed mine." The studio remained hushed, the impact of Keanu's words lingering like a powerful echo. His defining response had not only silenced the critics, but also sparked a moment of collective reflection, a rare pause in a world often rushed and harsh. This was not just a rebuttal, it was a heartfelt call to empathy and respect. Keanu Reeves had reclaimed the narrative, not through anger, but through unwavering dignity and truth. Keanu took a deep breath, his voice steady as he prepared to shift the momentum of the interview. "I want to address something very important," he began, locking eyes with the camera, then briefly glancing at Joy. "There have been claims questioning my charitable work, suggestions that my generosity is a performance designed for publicity. I'm here to clear that up once and for all." He paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle. "Over the past decade, I have donated approximately 70% of my total earnings to causes that matter deeply to me: children's hospitals, cancer research, families affected by tragedy. Not 70% of profits from a single film, but 70% of everything I've earned." Keanu's tone carried no arrogance, only quiet conviction. "These donations are made privately, without fanfare. I do not seek headlines or praise. In fact, I have gone to great lengths to keep these acts out of the public eye. Unfortunately, some information has leaked despite my wishes for discretion." The studio fell into a brief hush. Keanu continued, "To anyone doubting these claims, I invite you to contact my foundation directly. They provide full transparency and independent audits that verify how every penny is spent." A murmur rose among the audience. Keanu's calm yet powerful invitation was a clear challenge to the accusations that had been thrown against him. "Generosity isn't about grandstanding," he said softly. "It's about quietly making a difference, even when no one is watching." He turned slightly toward Joy, his voice firm but compassionate. "This isn't just about me. It's about the difference between true kindness and performative acts that serve only to elevate one's own image." Keanu's gaze sharpened. "I believe the attacks you've launched today, while painful and unfair, are not truly about me. They reveal something much deeper, a darkness, a pain that you are struggling with inside." The room seemed to lean in, sensing the shift. Keanu's words went beyond defense. They were a mirror held up to Joy's own aggression. "We all have our struggles, but tearing down others does not heal our own wounds." Joy's expression flickered with a mix of anger and something less easy to name, perhaps doubt or unease, but she refused to show weakness. The tension in the room was palpable as the audience began to visibly sway in Keanu's favor, many nodding, some even wiping away tears. Keanu's composure, honesty, and moral clarity were turning the tide. The battle was no longer just words. It was a confrontation between pain and healing, cruelty and compassion. And Keanu was leading the charge with a strength that commanded respect. The atmosphere in the studio shifted noticeably. Whispers and soft gasps rippled through the crowd as Keanu's words echoed, cutting through the tension. The earlier hostility seemed to dissolve, replaced by a growing admiration for the calm resilience he displayed. Keanu continued, "I don't share this to boast or seek sympathy. I share it because the truth matters. In a world where actions can be twisted and motives questioned, honesty must stand as our strongest defense." His gaze softened as he addressed the audience directly. True kindness is not a performance. It's not about being seen or praised. It's about recognizing the humanity in others and offering help quietly and sincerely. He paused, allowing the audience to absorb the depth of his message. When we reduce generosity to a spectacle, we cheapen the very spirit of giving. When we weaponize personal pain for entertainment, we betray the trust of those who suffer. The room was still. Every eye was fixed on Keanu. Even Joy's defiance appeared to waver as she struggled to maintain her composure under the weight of his words. Keanu's voice grew firmer, resonating with conviction. "I understand anger. I understand pain, but lashing out at others only spreads more darkness. We have a choice: to build up or tear down, to heal or to hurt." He took a measured breath, then addressed Joy once more. "Your attacks today were aimed at me, but they reveal your own inner battles. This isn't just a personal confrontation. It's a moment for reflection on how we treat one another." The audience responded with a mix of solemn silence and quiet applause. Keanu's poised, heartfelt response had not only defended him, but had challenged everyone watching to reconsider their own reactions to pain and kindness. Joy's posture stiffened, her eyes searching for a response, but no words came. The shift was undeniable. Keanu had reclaimed control of the narrative, turning what could have been a humiliating attack into a powerful testament to dignity and grace. The energy in the studio was electric, the battle lines redrawn. Keanu's voice carried a timeless message that transcended celebrity. It was a call for empathy, honesty, and respect in a world too often clouded by cruelty. Keanu's expression hardened slightly as he addressed Joy directly, his voice calm but edged with steel. "Joy, I know what you tried to do. You tried to make me a villain, to dismantle the kindness I've spent my life trying to live by. But you forgot one thing. Kindness is not weakness." He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, holding it up for the cameras to see. "Here's the number to my foundation. Anyone can call. Anyone can request a full audit of every dollar we raise and spend. This is transparency." The camera zoomed in on the screen displaying the foundation's official contact details. Murmurs spread through the audience. Some people pulled out their phones, already dialing in. Keanu continued, "In the last 10 years, I've donated nearly 70% of my earnings to causes close to my heart. Cancer research, children in need, families who've lost everything. And yes, many people don't know this because I pay people to keep it private." He glanced around, eyes fierce and unwavering. "So, if you want to question my generosity, look beyond the headlines. Understand the difference between real kindness and a show." The studio was silent, but for the quiet shuffle of shocked viewers processing the revelation. Even Joy's confident facade faltered, her face paling as the truth landed like a blow. Keanu's voice softened again, filled with profound empathy. "What truly hurts me is that behind all this, there's pain. Pain that made you lash out. Pain you tried to hide behind sharp words and accusations." He shook his head slowly. "But tearing others down doesn't heal that pain. It only deepens the darkness." The audience was visibly moved. Some wiped tears, others nodded slowly. The tide had turned. Support for Keanu was now undeniable. Joy sat frozen, unable to respond, her previous aggression replaced by a stunned silence. Keanu's powerful words had exposed not just her attack, but the loneliness and bitterness fueling it. In that moment, Keanu had done more than defend himself. He had issued a challenge. To choose kindness, to see beyond anger, and to embrace the strength in humility. The cameras caught every detail as the studio breathed together, witnessing a rare and unforgettable moment of grace born from conflict. The studio grew heavier with tension as Keanu Reeves fixed his gaze on Joy Behar, his voice steady but filled with undeniable conviction. "Joy, this has gone far enough." His words cut through the charged atmosphere, silencing even the murmurs in the audience. He leaned forward, eyes shining with a mixture of sadness and strength. "You weaponized grief today. You turned the most sacred memories of my life into ammunition for your attacks. You used my daughter, Ava, as a tool for entertainment. And that crosses a line no one should ever cross." A hush settled over the room. The gravity of his words rippled through every corner of the studio. Keanu's voice softened, but the weight of his message only deepened. "Ava's memory is not a weapon. She is not a headline. She is a part of me, forever cherished and never to be exploited." Joy's face began to shift. The mask of defiance cracked as tears welled up in her eyes. The defiant bravado melted into visible remorse. For the first time, the public and everyone watching witnessed the raw impact of her actions. The audience was frozen, some with hands covering mouths, others with eyes glistening. Even the other hosts exchanged looks of shock and uncertainty, caught in the whirlwind of emotions unfolding live before them. Backstage, producers hurriedly conferred, the control room buzzing with frantic energy. Cameras continued rolling, capturing every nuance. The breakdown, the pain, the courage. Keanu paused, allowing the moment to sink in. He raised his hand gently, signaling both an end and a beginning. "This isn't just about me or my family. It's about how we choose to treat each other. Will we build each other up with kindness or tear each other down with cruelty?" The question hung in the air, heavy yet hopeful, as the studio held its collective breath, waiting for what would come next. Joy's tears streamed down her face, a mixture of shock, guilt, and overwhelming regret. The realization of what she had just done, the depths to which she had wounded a man known for his kindness, settled on her like a crushing weight. For the first time, she was not the aggressor, wielding words like weapons, but a vulnerable figure, facing the consequences of her cruelty. Her eyes searched the studio, locking briefly with the host's expressions, some filled with disbelief, others with sympathy for Keanu. The audience, both in the studio and watching from home, was silent, caught in a rare moment of genuine emotion on live television. The hostility that had dominated the interview gave way to a solemn hush as the gravity of the situation took hold. Behind the scenes, producers hurriedly whispered to each other, debating if the feed should be cut to a commercial break. But the decision was made to let this moment play out, recognizing its significance beyond mere entertainment. The cameras remained trained on Joy's trembling figure, capturing a raw and unguarded glimpse of human remorse rarely seen on such a public stage. Keanu remained seated, his demeanor calm and dignified, embodying the strength that had carried him through years of personal hardship. He understood this was not about winning an argument or humiliating an opponent. It was about revealing the true cost of weaponizing grief for spectacle. His voice cut through the silence once more, gentle but resolute. Cruelty strips us of our shared humanity. It blinds us to the pain behind every face. We must choose empathy over judgment, kindness over cruelty. Every word carried the weight of lived experience. The losses he had endured, the loneliness he had felt, and the compassion that had blossomed in their wake. His message was clear. Respect for human dignity must never be sacrificed for fleeting ratings or applause. The studio remained still, the audience captivated by the profound sincerity in his tone. Keanu's presence filled the room, not with anger or bitterness, but with a quiet power that commanded respect and reflection. Slowly, Keanu rose from his chair. The studio held its breath, sensing the significance of what was about to happen. Each step he took toward the exit was deliberate, imbued with a strength born from pain and resilience. Before stepping off the set, he paused and turned to address everyone watching. His voice, steady and unwavering, resonated beyond the walls of the studio. Kindness is not weakness. Grace is not submission. I refuse to be your spectacle. I choose to stand for something greater. With those final words, Keanu Reeves left the stage. His exit a powerful statement against cruelty masquerading as conversation. The silence he left behind was heavy, marking an end to an episode that would forever change the way audiences viewed not only him, but the culture of entertainment itself. As Keanu's footsteps echoed away from the host's table, the tension in the studio reached a palpable peak. The air seemed thick with the weight of everything that had just transpired, a raw collision of pain, courage, and shattered illusions. Cameras continued rolling, capturing the stunned faces of everyone present, the hosts, the audience, and the production crew alike. No one moved to fill the sudden void. No one tried to speak. The moment demanded silence and reflection. Joy Behar remained seated, her posture slumped, eyes glazed with tears. Her bravado and sharp tongue had given way to a fragile, broken figure confronting the enormity of her actions. She clutched the armrests as if trying to ground herself, but the emotional impact was undeniable. Around her, the other hosts exchanged worried glances. Whoopi Goldberg, typically composed and strong, showed a rare expression of deep sorrow and disappointment. The camera lingered on her face, a silent witness to the unraveling before her. The audience's reaction was equally intense. Some were openly crying, others wiping away tears discreetly. Across the country, millions of viewers at home sat frozen, glued to their screens. Social media erupted within seconds. Hashtags trending and fans expressing shock, empathy, and support for Keanu. The overwhelming consensus was clear. What had been intended as a humiliating ambush had become a defining moment of human dignity. Keanu's final words echoed in many minds. Words not just about his own pain, but about the universal struggle to choose kindness in a world often driven by cruelty. His departure was not just an exit from a set, it was a powerful stand against the culture that feeds on tearing others down for entertainment. Backstage, Marcus hurried to catch up with Keanu, concern etched across his face. Keanu's gaze was distant but steady, the calm after the storm. Despite the chaos, his resolve was unwavering. This was a moment of truth, not just for him, but for everyone watching. The legacy of that day would ripple far beyond the studio walls. It was a lesson in grace, resilience, and the power of standing up for what truly matters. A moment when one man's strength inspired millions to reconsider how we treat one another, both in public and in private. The interview had ended, but its impact was just beginning. The moment Keanu Reeves left the stage, a heavy silence settled over the View studio. The air was thick with disbelief and the weight of raw emotion. The usual bustling energy of a live television set was replaced by a palpable tension, as everyone struggled to comprehend the scene they had just witnessed. What was supposed to be a simple promotional interview had spiraled into something deeply personal and historic. Whoopi Goldberg, the seasoned host who had seen countless moments on live TV, sat frozen for a moment, her expression etched with disappointment. She glanced toward Joy Behar, whose usual sharp confidence had vanished, replaced by a vulnerable and broken demeanor. The show's reputation, something they all had worked hard to maintain, now hung precariously in the balance. Backstage, the production crew exchanged uneasy looks, uncertain how to move forward. The director hesitated, debating whether to cut to a commercial break or continue rolling. Cameras remained trained on the studio, capturing every subtle expression and movement, preserving this extraordinary moment for millions of viewers. The gravity of the situation was not lost on anyone. Sarah, the makeup artist who had quietly warned Keanu earlier about Joy's unusual intensity, whispered softly to Sunny Host. They both expressed regret, their voices tinged with sadness and concern over how quickly things had escalated. The atmosphere was thick with remorse and confusion. Outside the studio, social media began to explode with activity. Hashtags like Keanu's Joy and Respect for Keanu started trending worldwide within minutes. Fans and critics flooded platforms with comments, overwhelmingly condemning the way Joy Behar had attacked Keanu and weaponized his private grief for entertainment. The public's response was swift and deeply supportive of Keanu's dignified stand. As the show paused for a break, the hosts and crew gathered in hushed conversations. The incident was not just a scandal. It was a cultural moment that raised profound questions about the ethics of entertainment and the boundaries of personal attacks on live television. The sense of shock was universal, but so was a budding respect for Keanu Reeves' courage in facing such a brutal ordeal with grace and strength. The studio, once filled with anticipation for a light-hearted interview, now wrestled with the fallout of an event that would be remembered for years to come. As the commercial break ended, the atmosphere in the studio remained heavy. Whoopi Goldberg took a deep breath and attempted to regain control of the show, her voice steady but filled with concern. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "what you have just witnessed is something no one expected. It's a reminder of the power and responsibility that comes with this platform." Her words were sincere, but the weight of the moment made it difficult to continue. Joy Behar sat quietly, her face pale and drawn, her eyes red from tears. The usually confident and outspoken host was visibly shaken. She avoided eye contact with her colleagues and stared blankly ahead. Her emotional collapse was undeniable, a turning point that marked the beginning of a profound shift in her public image. The woman who had once been a fierce television personality now seemed fragile and remorseful. Backstage, producers and staff scrambled to assess the damage. The incident was already viral, spreading like wildfire across social media and news outlets. The hashtag Keanu's Joy was dominating conversations worldwide. Fans praised Keanu for his strength and dignity, while many condemned Joy's aggressive tactics and cruel use of personal tragedy as entertainment. The Hideos, Emperor of Joy. Sarah and Sunny, the younger hosts who had been caught off guard by the unexpected aggression, confided in each other about their regrets. They had hoped for a respectful conversation and were deeply unsettled by how quickly things had unraveled. Their expressions reflected a mix of sympathy for both Keanu and Joy, understanding the complexity of what had just taken place. Meanwhile, discussions began among the network executives about how to handle the fallout. Damage control measures were considered, including public statements and possible apologies. But behind the scenes, many questioned how the show's format had allowed such a toxic confrontation to escalate on live television. The incident sparked broader conversations about the ethics of talk shows and the responsibility hosts have to their guests and audiences. Was this simply sensationalism gone too far, or did it reveal something deeper about the culture of cruelty in media? The questions hung in the air, unanswered but urgent. Despite the chaos, one thing was clear. Keanu Reeves had earned a new level of respect from viewers everywhere. His calm, measured response had touched millions, shining a light on kindness and dignity in the face of cruelty. The world was watching, and the impact of that day's events was only just beginning to unfold. The studio slowly emptied as the show wrapped up, but the weight of what had happened lingered in every corner. Crew members exchanged quiet conversations, many struggling to process the raw emotion that had unfolded on live television. The usually bustling set felt hollow, as if the walls themselves absorbed the tension and heartbreak. Whoopi Goldberg remained on set, delivering a final statement filled with remorse and hope. She acknowledged the pain caused by the confrontation and emphasized the need for compassion moving forward. Her words were heartfelt, but the damage to the show's reputation was already significant. Social media continued to explode with reactions from around the globe. Clips of Keanu's defiant yet compassionate responses were shared millions of times, inspiring widespread admiration. The hashtag #KeanuYouvesJoy trended for days, becoming a symbol of resilience and the fight against media cruelty. Fans organized online campaigns praising Keanu's grace and calling for more respectful discourse in entertainment. Joy Behar's career faced an uncertain future. Some viewers demanded accountability for her actions, while others called for understanding of her emotional breakdown. Interviews and editorials debated the incident's implications, with many media critics pointing to a toxic culture that rewards spectacle over humanity. Meanwhile, Sarah and Sunny privately discussed their shock and the lessons learned. They expressed a desire to promote kindness and to help change the tone of their industry. Their reflections underscored how deeply the incident affected not only the audience, but those within the television world as well. Backstage, Marcus comforted Keanu, proud yet concerned about the toll the event had taken. Keanu, ever humble, focused on the bigger picture, the opportunity to inspire change and remind the world of the power of empathy. Though the day had tested him, it also revealed his unshakable strength. As the lights dimmed and the studio doors closed, the echoes of that historic interview remained. A new chapter in television had begun, one shaped by courage, grace, and the hope that kindness might one day triumph over cruelty. After leaving the studio, Keanu settled into the quiet refuge of his car, the door clicking softly behind him. The chaos of the interview faded with each breath, replaced by a heavy, reflective silence. Beside him, Marcus juggled his phone, answering calls with practiced urgency, his voice a steady counterpoint to the storm swirling outside. Media outlets from around the world clamored for statements, interviews, and exclusive commentary. The pressure was immense, but Keanu remained composed, choosing his words with care and restraint. Despite the barrage of questions, Keanu's thoughts were not on himself. Instead, he expressed genuine concern for Joy Behar, the woman who had just attacked him so fiercely. He wondered aloud about her mental state and the personal pain that might have driven such a relentless assault. This empathy surprised many who had witnessed the interview. His ability to separate the attack from the person behind it demonstrated a profound humanity that resonated deeply with the public. Marcus, though anxious about the growing media frenzy, admired Keanu's dignity. He knew the stakes were high, not just for the film's promotion but for Keanu's reputation and peace of mind. As the calls continued, Marcus filtered through the noise, prioritizing only the most urgent contacts. Keanu's calm presence was a steady anchor in a sea of chaos, embodying the grace that had become his hallmark. Outside the car, the world was already reacting. Social media feeds exploded with clips from the show, fans rallying around Keanu with messages of support and admiration. The hashtag Keanu's Joy trended globally, symbolizing more than a moment of conflict. It became a rallying cry for kindness and respect in public discourse. Followers praised Keanu's restraint, highlighting how his response transcended the usual celebrity drama to become something truly inspirational. Back in the shadows of the public eye, Joy Behar was grappling with the fallout. The intense backlash and personal toll of her actions weighed heavily. Though she had once wielded her sharp tongue with confidence, the consequences of her words had brought a stark reckoning. Reports surfaced that she was retreating from the spotlight, seeking solace and time to reflect on the path that had led her here. The narrative of a woman confronting her own demons began to take shape, adding a complex layer to the story unfolding before millions. Inside the studio, the atmosphere was thick with disbelief and tension. The hosts gathered quietly in the green room, the usual post-show energy replaced by a heavy silence. Whoopi Goldberg expressed her deep disappointment, not just in what had happened on air, but in the damage it had caused to the show's reputation. She spoke softly about the importance of respect and integrity, reminding everyone that television should uplift, not tear down. Sarah and Sunny, two producers who had been nervously watching the interview unfold, confessed their regret. They had hoped for a smooth, lighthearted promotion, but instead witnessed a confrontation that spiraled wildly out of control. Their worry extended beyond ratings. This incident had shaken the core values of the program. Staff members debated in hushed tones whether the show could recover from such a public breakdown. Meanwhile, social media continued to roar. The hashtag Keanu vs. Joy dominated trending lists worldwide, with millions sharing clips, opinions, and heartfelt messages. The majority condemned Joy's conduct, labeling it cruel and unnecessary. Fans lauded Keanu's calmness and dignity, praising how he handled the pressure with unwavering grace. Across platforms, people began discussing the broader implications of using pain as entertainment and the need for more compassionate discourse in media. Journalists and commentators weighed in, framing the incident as a watershed moment in celebrity interviews. Some called it a cultural reckoning, forcing audiences and media figures alike to reconsider how personal attacks are normalized on television. Others debated the ethics of live broadcasting and whether there should be stricter boundaries to protect guests from such ambushes. Amid the storm, Keanu's publicists carefully crafted statements emphasizing his message of kindness and understanding. They highlighted his concern for Joy, underscoring the strength it took to respond with empathy after being so publicly attacked. This narrative further endeared Keanu to the public, solidifying his reputation as one of Hollywood's most grounded and compassionate figures. Joy's retreat from the public eye only deepened the story's complexity. Though she remained silent publicly, behind the scenes she was reportedly seeking help, grappling with the emotional fallout of her actions. This unfolding personal journey added a somber note to a saga that had captivated millions, reminding everyone that beneath the headlines were human lives forever changed by the events of that day. As the hours passed, the media frenzy showed no signs of slowing. Keanu remained composed in his car, sitting beside Marcus, who was overwhelmed with phone calls. Every major news outlet, from CNN to entertainment blogs, wanted a statement. Agents, publicists, and reporters flooded Marcus's phone with urgent requests. Yet, Keanu's focus was elsewhere. His thoughts lingered on Joy Behar, despite the harshness of her attacks. Marcus watched Keanu carefully, surprised by his client's empathy. "She really hurt you today?" Marcus said quietly, hoping to prompt some emotion. Keanu nodded, but responded with a calmness that surprised them both. Hurt people, Marcus. he said softly. Someone driven to tear another down must be carrying an unimaginable burden themselves. This insight deepened Marcus's respect for Keanu's character. Instead of fueling anger or revenge, Keanu's response was rooted in understanding. "That kind of kindness is rare," Marcus remarked, "especially after everything she said." Keanu agreed, emphasizing that responding with grace was his way of reclaiming power from cruelty. Outside the studio, fans rallied fervently on social media. Thousands posted messages of support, sharing clips of Keanu's dignified replies and condemning the cruelty displayed by Joy. The hashtag #KeanuLovesJoy continued trending, but the tone had shifted. From confrontation to celebration of empathy and strength, many commenters expressed gratitude for Keanu's example, calling him a beacon of hope in a divisive world. Meanwhile, Joy had vanished from public view. Friends and colleagues reported that she was struggling to come to terms with the backlash. The media speculated about her mental and emotional state, with some suggesting she sought professional help. Rumors spread that Joy was considering leaving the show permanently, a move that would mark a dramatic end to her long career. Within media circles, discussions about the incident grew intense. Industry insiders debated whether this moment would change how interviews were conducted, pushing for greater respect and accountability. Conversations about the ethics of exploiting personal pain for ratings took center stage, shining a spotlight on the need for reform in entertainment journalism. Keanu, meanwhile, declined multiple interview offers. Instead, he focused on his foundation and quietly continued his philanthropic work, letting his actions speak louder than words. His measured silence only amplified public admiration, casting him as a figure of dignity amid chaos. As the day turned into night, the world was left to reflect on the unprecedented clash, one that exposed both the darkness and light within human nature. The confrontation at The View had become more than a viral moment. It was a profound cultural reckoning, inviting all to reconsider how we treat each other in public and private spheres. After the emotional storm on live television, Joy Behar found herself alone with the weight of her actions pressing heavily on her soul. The vibrant and sharp-tongued host, who had once thrived on biting commentary, now confronted a profound silence that echoed louder than any applause or criticism. The backlash had been swift and overwhelming, but what unsettled her the most was the deep personal reckoning stirring inside. The woman who had fiercely attacked Keanu Reeves, weaponizing his grief, now grappled with the bitterness and unhappiness that had driven her to such cruelty. Feeling lost and desperate, Joy reached out to an old friend, Maya Lin, a trusted former law enforcement officer known for her calm wisdom and steadfast support in difficult times. Maya had been a guiding presence for Joy during previous rough patches, someone who listened without judgment and spoke with clarity. On the phone, Joy's voice trembled as she confessed the dark feelings that had clouded her mind. "I didn't just want to challenge Keanu," she admitted quietly. "I wanted to tear down the goodness I saw because it made me confront my own pain." Maya listened patiently, acknowledging Joy's vulnerability. She reminded Joy that bitterness and anger often mask deeper wounds, and that true healing required honesty and accountability. "You have a choice now," Maya said softly. "You can let this break you, or you can use it to become someone better. The first step is to make amends, to yourself and to those you've hurt." Encouraged by Maya's guidance, Joy agreed to begin a path towards self-forgiveness and meaningful change, though she knew it wouldn't be easy. In the weeks that followed the fateful interview, Joy Behar faced a storm of public outrage that transformed her world overnight. The usually confident and outspoken host found herself retreating from the glare of the spotlight. The calls for accountability, the harsh critiques on social media, and the disappointment of colleagues weighed heavily on her. It wasn't just professional fallout, it was deeply personal. The realization that she had used someone's most sacred grief, Keanu's daughter Ava's death, as a weapon, gnawed at her conscience. Seeking to escape the relentless judgment and to find clarity, Joy made a drastic decision. She sold her longtime Manhattan apartment, a place that had been her home through decades of television success, and moved to a small, quiet cottage in Vermont. This retreat from the world was both physical and emotional. In the peaceful surroundings of the countryside, far removed from flashing cameras and critical headlines, Joy found space to confront the woman she had become and the harm she had caused. Volunteering at a children's cancer ward became her unexpected sanctuary. The ward was a place marked by resilience and hope, where families fought battles far greater than any public controversy. Among the children she helped, Joy found faces that reminded her of the innocence and fragility of life, reminders that struck a deep chord in her wounded spirit. The children's courage and the family's unyielding love offered Joy a perspective she hadn't allowed herself before, a chance to witness true kindness and the power of compassion in action. With no cameras and no audience, Joy began the humbling work of listening. She spent hours reading stories to the children, helping with art projects, and offering a gentle presence to those navigating unimaginable pain. It was a stark contrast to the hostile environment she had created on television, and slowly, the experience began to soften her heart. The work was not about redemption in the public eye, but about genuine human connection, about making a difference without expectation of praise. Joy also started journaling daily, pouring her thoughts and emotions onto the pages of a worn notebook. Her entries were honest and raw, filled with regrets, reflections, and moments of painful self-awareness. She wrote about the loneliness that accompanied her fall from grace, the deep shame she carried, and the fierce desire to find peace within herself. The act of writing became a therapeutic ritual, a way to face the darkest parts of her soul and to chart a path toward healing. In the quiet of her Vermont home, Joy's journal became a mirror reflecting the complex journey of self-forgiveness. She grappled with the idea that some wounds may never fully heal, that the consequences of her actions might linger indefinitely in public memory. Yet, she also embraced the belief that redemption was not about erasing the past, but about choosing to live differently in the future. Her words revealed a woman determined to grow beyond her mistakes, to embody the kindness she once mocked. Throughout this process, Maya Lin remained a steady source of guidance and encouragement. Their conversations, often long and contemplative, helped Joy understand that true change requires patience and humility. Maya reminded her that every small act of kindness counted, that rebuilding trust was a gradual process, and that authentic transformation could inspire others to confront their own flaws. Joy's evolving understanding was evident in her reflections. She acknowledged the cruelty she had inflicted on Keanu Reeves, recognizing it as a reflection of her own pain and disillusionment. Yet she also saw hope in the possibility of choosing empathy over bitterness, of replacing judgment with compassion. This internal shift began to manifest in her daily life as she sought to offer comfort rather than conflict, healing rather than harm. The Vermont community witnessed a remarkable transformation in the woman who had once been a lightning rod for controversy. Joy's sharp wit and acerbic humor softened into a gentle warmth that touched those around her. The children she cared for called her Mrs. B, a testament to the affection she had earned through genuine kindness. Her story became one not of downfall, but of redemption, a powerful reminder that even the most broken can find their way back to the light. Joy's journey was not publicized or broadcast. It was deeply personal. She learned to listen without judgment, to give without expectation, and to forgive herself as part of the healing process. Her experience became a quiet beacon of hope for those struggling with their own demons, illustrating that the path to grace is paved with honesty, courage, and the willingness to change. In the aftermath of the explosive interview, Keanu Reeves made a conscious decision to avoid the flood of revenge interviews and sensational publicity stunts that often follow such controversies. Unlike many who might seize the moment to defend themselves or launch a media campaign, Keanu chose a path marked by quiet dignity and restraint. He understood that responding with anger or vengeance would only fuel the fire of public spectacle, detracting from what truly mattered. Instead, Keanu turned his focus inward and toward meaningful action. He dedicated his energy to founding the Ava Foundation, a charitable organization named in honor of his daughter Ava. The foundation's mission was clear and heartfelt: to support families grappling with the devastating realities of pregnancy loss and childhood cancer. These causes were deeply personal to Keanu, reflecting the pain he had experienced and his desire to transform grief into hope. Through the Ava Foundation, Keanu sought to provide not only financial assistance, but also emotional support and community for families in crisis. The foundation organized hospital visits, funded research initiatives, and created programs aimed at easing the burden on parents and children alike. For Keanu, this work was more than charity. It was a way to honor Ava's memory and to channel his pain into healing for others. While the media frenzy swirled around the television incident, Keanu remained a steady presence in the background, quietly building something lasting and positive. His public statements focused on themes of compassion, personal growth, and the transformative power of kindness. He emphasized that real strength lies in empathy, in choosing understanding over judgment, and in the courage to be vulnerable. These messages resonated deeply with his fans and the wider public, offering a balm to a culture often hungry for conflict and spectacle. The incident itself sparked a broader conversation about the ethics of entertainment and the role of cruelty in media. Viewers and industry insiders alike began questioning the practice of ambush interviews and sensationalist tactics that prioritize ratings over respect. Keanu's composed response became a powerful counterpoint to the toxic culture of public shaming, inspiring many to reconsider the impact of their words and actions. In the wake of the public outcry, other talk shows and media outlets started implementing stricter guidelines to prevent ambush interviews and protect guests from undue harassment. These new protocols emphasize transparency, respect, and the importance of maintaining a safe space for honest dialogue. The changes marked a significant shift in the industry, reflecting a growing awareness of the psychological toll such confrontations can have. The phrase, "What would Keanu do?" began to circulate widely across social media platforms, quickly becoming a mantra for kindness and grace under pressure. Fans and commentators used the hashtag to remind themselves and others to choose empathy in moments of conflict, to respond to cruelty with dignity, and to resist the urge to escalate negativity. The phrase captured the essence of Keanu's response: calm, compassionate, and unshakable. Keanu's approach contrasted sharply with the spectacle that had unfolded on live television. While many had expected a fiery rebuttal or a breakdown, Keanu's measured silence and focus on healing spoke volumes. His example encouraged others to seek constructive ways to address pain and injustice, fostering a culture of support rather than division. Behind the scenes, Keanu's team worked tirelessly to expand the reach and impact of the Ava Foundation. Collaborations with hospitals, research institutions, and community organizations allowed the foundation to touch more lives and bring greater awareness to the challenges faced by families dealing with loss and illness. Keanu's commitment inspired many donors and volunteers, transforming the foundation into a beacon of hope and resilience. Throughout this time, Keanu remained grounded, often retreating from the public eye to spend time with close friends and family. His humility and authenticity deepened the admiration people felt for him, reinforcing the image of a man who lives his values rather than merely preaching them. Keanu's quiet response was a testament to the power of kindness as a form of strength. The cultural ripple effect of Keanu's reaction extended beyond entertainment and social media. Conversations about the ethics of public discourse reached academic forums, workplaces, and community groups. Discussions about how to foster empathy in a divisive world gained momentum, with Keanu's example often cited as a guiding light. Some television programs revamped their interview formats, incorporating empathy training for hosts and producers. The goal was to create environments where guests could share authentically, without fear of personal attacks or manipulative questioning. These changes represented a hopeful step toward a more respectful media landscape. Meanwhile, the Avier Foundation grew steadily, supporting thousands of families and funding groundbreaking research. Keanu's involvement was not just symbolic. He personally participated in hospital visits, fundraising events, and advocacy efforts. His genuine connection to the cause brought a level of sincerity that resonated widely. In interviews and public appearances following the incident, Keanu maintained a consistent message: the importance of compassion, the need to understand others' pain, and the belief that kindness can change the world. He refused to dwell on the negativity, instead inviting everyone to reflect on how they could make a positive difference in their communities. The legacy of that intense day on The View was not one of conflict or division, but of healing and hope. Keanu Reeves' quiet response showed that dignity in the face of cruelty could inspire a movement toward kindness, empathy, and respect. In a culture often consumed by outrage, Keanu's example remains a powerful reminder of what it truly means to be human. Following the devastating live confrontation, Joy Behar found herself at a crossroads she had never anticipated. The backlash from her relentless attack on Keanu Reeves had left her reputation fractured and her spirit deeply shaken. Seeking refuge from the relentless media scrutiny and the harsh judgment of the public, Joy made the profound decision to leave behind her life in New York City. She sold her upscale Manhattan apartment and moved to a modest cottage in rural Vermont, a place far removed from the glitz and glare of television studios. In Vermont, Joy sought solace and purpose in volunteering at a local children's cancer ward. The ward was a quiet sanctuary filled with brave children facing unimaginable battles. Here, there were no scripts, no cameras, and no audiences, only the raw and unfiltered realities of life and death. She spent her days reading stories to the children, helping them with art projects, and simply offering her presence as a source of comfort. This work was a stark contrast to her former life, yet it was exactly what she needed to begin a long journey toward healing. As she immersed herself in this new role, Joy began to shed the armor of cynicism and sarcasm that had long defined her public persona. The sharp wit that once cut through conversations now softened, replaced by a growing capacity for empathy and patience. It was in these quiet moments, away from the judgmental eyes of the world, that Joy began to understand the true meaning of kindness, not as a performance, but as a genuine act of human connection. Joy started to keep a journal, a private sanctuary where she could honestly confront her feelings of guilt, regret, and sorrow. Writing became a daily ritual, a way to process the whirlwind of emotions that followed the incident with Keanu. Through her entries, she began to unravel the bitterness and pain that had driven her to lash out in such a cruel manner. The journal served as a mirror, reflecting her innermost struggles and her gradual awakening to the healing power of compassion. One particular day at the cancer ward marked a turning point in Joy's transformation. While sitting quietly with a group of children, a small boy named Tommy approached her. His eyes sparkled with innocent curiosity as he asked the simple question, "Why do you look so sad?" The sincerity and purity in his voice struck Joy deeply. For the first time in a long while, she confronted the truth about her own sorrow. Not the bravado of a television personality, but the raw vulnerability of a human being weighed down by remorse and regret. This encounter with Tommy became a catalyst for profound self-reflection. Joy realized that healing would not come from denying her mistakes or defending her past actions, but from embracing her pain and choosing to change. The work she did in the ward shifted from obligation to heartfelt commitment. She no longer sought to repair her image or win back public approval. Instead, she focused on offering genuine comfort and care to the children and families she served. Joy's journal blossomed with candid reflections on her evolving understanding of kindness. She explored the stark contrast between cruelty and compassion, recognizing how her past behavior had inflicted pain not just on Keanu, but also on herself. The journal entries detailed her struggles, setbacks, and small victories on the path to becoming a better person. She wrote about learning to listen with an open heart, to respond with gentleness instead of judgment, and to see beyond surface appearances to the shared humanity in everyone she met. This process was neither quick nor easy. Joy wrestled daily with feelings of shame and self-doubt. Yet with each passing day, she grew more resolute in her commitment to change. The walls of bitterness that had once confined her began to crumble, making way for a new sense of hope and purpose. With the letter finally completed, Joy felt a mixture of vulnerability and hope as she entrusted it to the Ave Foundation. It was a moment of reckoning, not just with Keanu Reeves, but with herself. Writing that letter had forced her to confront the darkest parts of her soul, to acknowledge the pain she had caused, and to commit fully to a new way of living. This was not a mere apology. It was a profound testament to her willingness to change and grow. When Keanu received the letter, he read it quietly in his home office, surrounded by photos of Ava and his other loved ones who had passed. The letter's raw honesty touched him deeply. It was not a call for forgiveness, but a shared recognition of human frailty and the power of transformation. Joy's words revealed a woman who had been broken by her own bitterness, but was now choosing to build something new out of the ruins. Keanu understood that true healing required more than public reconciliation or feel-good statements. It demanded an ongoing commitment to kindness, humility, and respect for others' pain. He saw in Joy's letter the first steps on a difficult but necessary journey. A journey from cruelty to compassion, from despair to hope. This letter became a silent bridge between two very different lives, united by suffering and the desire for redemption. It symbolized the possibility of change, even after moments of profound failure. Joy's transformation was not just a personal victory, but a beacon of hope for anyone struggling to overcome their past mistakes. In the days and weeks that followed, Joy continued her volunteer work at the Children's Hospital, no longer motivated by guilt or obligation, but by genuine love and care. She immersed herself in the small joys and sorrows of the children and their families, learning every day what it truly meant to be kind. Her journal filled with reflections on her ongoing healing, her struggles with self-forgiveness, and the lessons she drew from the children's resilience. One entry stood out. "I am becoming the sorry out of the mouths of babes," she wrote, quoting Tommy's innocent wisdom. It was a promise to live differently, to add light where there had once been darkness. Meanwhile, Keanu quietly supported her transformation from afar, knowing that the true impact of their story would ripple far beyond the cameras and headlines. Their shared journey became a powerful example of how even the deepest wounds could lead to unexpected growth and healing, if met with courage, honesty, and above all, kindness. After reading Joy's letter in the quiet of his home, Keanu felt a profound mixture of emotions swirling inside him. There was sorrow for the pain that had been caused, but also a cautious hope sparked by her honest words and the changes she described. It was clear to him that Joy was beginning a difficult path toward healing, one that required support, not judgment. With a steady breath, Keanu picked up his phone and dialed her number. The call was unexpected, and when Joy answered, her voice was tinged with surprise and hesitation. For a moment, silence hung between them, filled with the weight of unspoken emotions and the distance of years spent apart in conflict. Keanu gently broke the silence, his tone calm and sincere. "Joy, I received your letter. Thank you for sharing your journey with me. I wanted to hear from you directly." His words were simple but carried the weight of genuine care and a willingness to understand. Joy's voice trembled slightly as she responded, unsure how to bridge the gulf between their past and this fragile moment of connection. They began to talk, not about the interview or the pain it caused, but about the work Joy was doing now. She shared stories of the children she volunteered with, the small victories, and the moments of profound vulnerability she witnessed daily. Keanu listened intently, his heart touched by her commitment to something bigger than herself, something rooted in compassion. This conversation marked the start of a new chapter, a chance to build a fragile but meaningful bridge between two very different journeys, united by suffering and the hope for redemption. Joy's voice, though still fragile, grew steadier as she opened up about her work at the children's cancer ward. She described the quiet moments spent reading stories to the kids, helping with art projects, and simply being present in a place where hope and heartbreak lived side by side. She spoke of the incredible courage those children showed daily and how witnessing their battles had humbled her in ways she never expected. Keanu listened intently, his own experiences with loss and grief lending weight to the conversation. Keanu shared how founding the AVA Foundation gave him a purpose beyond the spotlight, a way to honor his daughter Ava's memory by supporting families enduring unimaginable pain. He spoke of compassion not as a grand gesture, but as the small, consistent acts of kindness that bind people together. Change, he said softly, comes when we choose to see the humanity in each other, even when it's hard. He acknowledged Joy's flaws with gentle understanding, recognizing that bitterness and anger often come from wounds still needing healing. We all carry pain, he said, but it's what we do with that pain that defines us. His voice was steady, but filled with emotion, embodying the strength that had become his hallmark. Joy's tears came freely now as she confessed how the televised confrontation had shattered her. I destroyed a part of myself that day, she admitted. Yet, in her new life serving others, she had found a fragile hope. The children's courage inspired her to try to be better, to leave cruelty behind and embrace kindness. The path wasn't easy, but it was the only one she wanted to walk. The call unfolded as a rare moment of vulnerability and connection. Two souls laid bare after a public storm. It wasn't about absolution or forgetting, but about acknowledging fault, embracing change, and finding the strength to move forward. Keanu and Joy spoke as equals, their conversation a testament to the power of compassion to heal even the deepest wounds. This unexpected call became a fragile but meaningful bridge between two very different journeys, one marked by grace and the other by redemption. It was a turning point that hinted at the possibility of reconciliation, not just between two individuals, but within themselves. The conversation between Keanu and Joy lingered in the quiet spaces between words, filled with unspoken understanding. Keanu's tone remained gentle but unwavering as he reminded her that mistakes don't define a person forever. Rather, it's the courage to confront them and choose a different path that truly matters. It takes strength to admit when you're wrong, and even more strength to change, he said. You've taken those first steps. Joy's voice cracked as she acknowledged the weight of his forgiveness, not just for the public wounds she had inflicted, but for the personal battles she still faced. She shared how the children she now cared for had become her teachers, showing her the meaning of unconditional love and resilience. They don't ask for much, just kindness and presence, she said softly. And that's what I want to give. Keanu expressed his hope that this call might inspire others to seek healing through empathy rather than destruction. He spoke about the broader cultural shift the incident had sparked, the growing recognition that cruelty disguised as entertainment has real human costs. If my response can help change that culture, he said, then something good can come from even the darkest moments. Before they ended the call, Keanu invited Joy to visit the AVA Foundation whenever she was ready. You're welcome anytime, he said warmly. There's a place for all of us in the work of healing. Joy's gratitude was palpable, and as they said their goodbyes, both knew this was not an end, but a tentative new beginning. The call closed a painful chapter and opened a hopeful one, illustrating the power of compassion to transform lives. In that moment, two very different people connected through shared pain, vulnerability, and the possibility of redemption. This unexpected call became a symbol, not just of forgiveness between Keanu Reeves and Joy Behar, but of the profound impact that kindness and understanding can have in a world too often marked by judgment and cruelty. The aftermath of the incident at The View echoed far beyond the walls of the studio, shaking the very foundations of television journalism. The raw confrontation between Keanu Reeves and Joy Behar became a catalyst for change in how celebrity interviews were conducted. Across networks, producers and hosts began implementing strict new guidelines designed to uphold respect and dignity during interviews. The culture of ambushing guests with personal, humiliating attacks gave way to a renewed focus on empathy and kindness. This shift was not just about preserving reputations, but about honoring the humanity behind the headlines. Keanu Reeves quietly continued his philanthropic work, undeterred by the media frenzy. His AVA Foundation, dedicated to helping families suffering from pregnancy loss and childhood cancer, grew in impact and reach. Keanu's humility and dedication became a beacon of hope, demonstrating that true influence comes from compassion and action rather than spectacle. Millions worldwide were inspired not only by his career, but by the grace and strength he showed in the face of cruelty. Keanu's example reshaped public expectations, reminding everyone that kindness is a powerful form of resistance. Joy Behar's resignation marked a profound turning point in her life. She withdrew from the spotlight and sold her Manhattan apartment, seeking refuge in a small cottage in Vermont. Away from the cameras, she began volunteering at a children's cancer ward, dedicating herself to service with quiet sincerity. This transformation was documented in personal journals, where she reflected on the lessons of kindness and the damage caused by cruelty. Her story became a reminder that even those who falter deeply can find a path toward healing and redemption through genuine change and humility. The story of that fateful day on The View went far beyond a simple television scandal. It became a pivotal moment in cultural history. What had begun as an ambush interview transformed into a powerful lesson about empathy, respect, and the consequences of cruelty for entertainment. Across social media platforms, hashtags like "What would Keanu do?" and "Kindness over cruelty" gained traction, sparking conversations around the world about the ethics of public discourse and how society treats its icons. Media outlets and talk shows across the industry took notice. The incident ignited debates in editorial meetings and newsrooms, compelling producers, hosts, and executives to reconsider their approach to interviews. Guidelines were drafted to protect guests from aggressive ambush tactics and personal attacks. Emotional intelligence training became a priority for hosts and staff alike, with emphasis on fostering respectful, thoughtful dialogue rather than sensationalism. For many, the event marked the beginning of a shift in television culture, a move toward dignity and compassion, replacing manufactured outrage. Keanu's reaction also became a blueprint for how to handle public adversity with grace and strength. Unlike many public figures who might have sought revenge or public sympathy, Keanu remained focused on his core values. His continued philanthropic work, quiet, consistent, and impactful, showed a deeper strength that outshone the momentary glare of controversy. His actions reminded millions that true power lies in kindness and humility, even when faced with cruelty and injustice. The public's admiration for Keanu grew exponentially. Fans and fellow celebrities echoed his message, using his example to promote kindness within their communities. The phrase, "What would Keanu do?" evolved into a cultural shorthand, used to encourage empathy in online conversations and real-life interactions. This simple question challenged people to reconsider their own behaviors and responses, fostering a more compassionate society. Joy Behar's public resignation was a symbolic end to a turbulent chapter. She stepped away from the spotlight, retreating from the relentless glare of the media and the harsh judgments of the public. Yet her withdrawal was not simply an escape. it marked the beginning of a profound personal transformation. Away from cameras and headlines, Joy immersed herself in volunteer work and self-reflection, seeking to repair the damage caused not only to Keanu, but to her own spirit. Her journey from public disgrace to private redemption became a quiet but powerful testament to the human capacity for change. Letters she wrote to Keanu and to herself detailed the painful process of confronting her own bitterness and learning to embrace empathy. These writings, shared through trusted friends and eventually made public, offered a rare glimpse into the struggles behind the persona she had long presented on television. They reminded the world that even those who cause pain can find a path to healing. Meanwhile, Keanu's legacy continued to flourish, not through headlines, but through ongoing acts of kindness and advocacy. The AVA Foundation, named in honor of his daughter, became a beacon of hope for families facing pregnancy loss and childhood illnesses. Keanu's humility and unwavering commitment to helping others inspired countless individuals to act with compassion in their own lives. The story closed not with grand gestures, but with a simple call to action: to choose kindness, to practice empathy, and to stand courageously against cruelty in all its forms. Millions who witnessed the showdown and its aftermath carry that message forward, forever changed by the example of one man's grace under fire. What would you do in Keanu's shoes? How can you be a force for kindness in a world too often shadowed by cruelty? The answers may lie within each of us.